Hello, Aaron.
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
You know who I want to have? Do you know a guy named Dag Amont?
No, I don't.
I try to do this wish list thing, right?
Okay.
For my podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a who I want on the podcast next is a guy named Dag Amont.
Dag Amont. What
Yeah.
does Dag Amont do?
He's a bass player in a rock band, but he
Okay.
has a promotional company out in Portage la Prairie,
Okay.
and I'd love to get him on here to talk about that because I think that's really cool.
About the promotional
Yeah.
company out in...
Yeah. Because
Or-
like
in
bands, he books
Portage.
bands and stuff.
Nice.
Yeah. But yeah, so if Dag's watching,
Come on,
You know.
Dag.
call me, man. Call
Yeah.
Jeannie, then Jeannie will call me.
No,
Tell
I
me to
won't.
call you.
No.
How's it
Yes.
going? How are you
Good.
doing?
I'm doing really good.
It's been a while since we've seen each other. Like about, what, 8 years, 10 years?
About that. I don't know. Some
And-
of it's foggy.
Yeah. And you're in Selkirk,
I live in Selkirk, Manitoba.
and you've gone
Yes.
through a bit of a transformation since the last time I saw you.
I
The last
have.
time
I have.
we were both in different places.
Yes.
Right? And
I
now
was in... Yeah.
you're doing so much stuff. I read about you online.
Okay.
The first thing I read was you were doing the red ribbon.
The
on
ribbons. The red
bridge,
ribbons. Yep.
and people were taking them off, and
They
you
were. Yes.
and you were causing a stink, which is good for you, by the way.
I was creating awareness, and it wasn't meant to provoke people.
Mm-hmm.
It was meant to bring the issue of the missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, up onto a higher, more public radar.
Yeah.
And what better place than where they belong, on bridges.
Yeah,
On bridges.
because it's a very public spot, and
Absolutely.
it's going to be seen
You
by a lot of
can't-
people. You can't ignore it.
You can't ignore it because you're crossing over. You're a captive audience,
Yeah.
if only for a moment.
So you started doing that,
I started doing it in Selkirk. Yes,
and how many times have you done that?
I don't really keep track of that.
Yeah.
But probably I go out at least four times a year. 4 times a year, on the 2 different bridges. I don't limit it to Selkirk either.
Yeah. Cool. So you've gone to other places and done
yes,
this.
absolutely.
Where have you gone?
I've gone along the Westman region. Mm-hmm. I've gone to Portage la Prairie.
And where is it? Bridges?
Bridges.
Yeah.
Yes.
Bridges are
I
your
stick
thing.
to the bridges.
Wow,
Yes.
that's interesting.
Yeah.
Why is that? Because there's a lot of initiatives, right? So, like, what I know of it is the red dress movement.
Mm-hmm.
There was an art installation where it was just red dresses.
Right.
And you can still see them in Winnipeg once in a while. Like, I know if you go down a certain street in Winnipeg, you'll see a red dress hanging from a tree, and that's in honor of the murder
It is.
and
It
murder
is.
and missing Indigenous women.
Yep.
So that's their thing. Whoever did that, I'm not
Yes.
sure who that is.
I-
But yours is the bridges and the red
bridges.
ribbons.
And the red ribbons. And it actually started, I made contact with Janet and Rhonda Head.
Mm-hmm.
And they were originally ones of them and 2 other women from the PAW. They're the ones who started the Red Ribbon Awareness
Mm-hmm.
campaign. And it grew from...
Rhonda's an amazing singer.
Yes, she is.
Yes.
She's awesome. She's
Sorry,
beautiful. And
I just had to say that.
And Janet is just just
Yeah, they're
fabulous
beautiful.
too. Yes,
Yeah.
wonderful sisters. They started in the PAW out of the need to bring awareness to the missing and murdered in that region, and then it just grew. It grew to across the country, and actually now it's gone into the United States.
Mm-hmm.
So they specifically, I thought that Selkirk, it had such beautiful spans. The Red River, it's absolutely,
Yeah.
it's beautiful, it's powerful.
Yeah,
It's,
water is very important to everybody.
Absolutely.
But it's really powerful. I used to live out there in Selkirk,
Yeah.
and actually when I met you, that's when I first started like living out there,
Okay.
and I slept in the hotel, which is
Okay.
right by the water.
Yes.
And I had amazing dreams
Wow.
because I was like, why am I dreaming this stuff? It's because I was by the water.
Water is healing.
Yeah.
Water is the source of life. It is the blood vein
Yeah.
of Mother Earth. I have the deep connection to it through my cultural, traditional lessons.
And you're a 60s scooper, right?
I am.
That's just my phone.
I thought that was
It's
the
just-
alarm.
No, it's not the
Okay.
alarm. It's the phone. It's just
Okay.
it's gonna ring.
Okay.
Whoever's calling me right now, sorry, kind of
Yeah.
busy.
I am.
But you're a 60s scooper.
I am 60s scooper.
And you grew up where?
I actually grew up off the reserve, on the reserve, Rolling River. Rolling River
River.
First Nations in Manitoba.
Yeah,
That's
that's
an
by-
hour north of Brandon.
Yeah, that's by Erickson, right?
Yes, that's the community right outside the reserve.
Yeah.
And I was there, there, and then off. I lived in Boozhoo Prairie. I was born in Boozhoo Prairie, actually, but went from the reserve to the different towns. But mainly our base was the reserve. So I was there until I was in Canada until I was 9, and that's when I was adopted out to a place outside of Philadelphia.
Wow.
Yep.
Philly.
Yo.
Wow. I got a friend who's from Philly. His name is Brian Ward. He's a really cool guy,
Okay.
and he's native too.
Really?
He's from
Okay.
Pine Ridge.
What's his name?
Brian Ward.
Nice. I met another guy from Pine Ridge when I was in Philadelphia.
Pretty
And-
strange, eh? Like we just got scattered. Some of
Yes.
us.
Yeah.
You know?
And of all the places, Philadelphia.
I think that's the biggest issue that you are facing, like the 60 scoop. But
You
there's
know-
a lot of stuff going on right now for you, right? Like the 60 scoop is a part of it. It's a huge part of it. And then there's the murdered and missing.
Okay, but going back to what you're saying
Yeah.
is, I think that the 60 scoop is the main source. The 60 scoop is about my disconnection to my family, and that's the original trauma.
Yeah.
I am disconnected for having been adopted out. You
Yeah,
know,
it's amazing.
Looking back now, I see the different times throughout my life when I was in crisis, so many times, and I didn't recognize that, because I functioned through it. I dealt with the crisis, not knowing that I was in a crisis, by compartmentalizing, by just filing it away
Yeah.
in a nice, neat
A
little
lot
cabinet.
of us do that. I've done
And that cabinet was bursting,
that. Yeah.
and I just shoved in even more
Yeah.
until, and all along, I think I remember when I was like 16, 17 years old, thinking, I'm going to have to deal with this at some point, but today is not the day. And I knew I would have to deal with it far into the future if I made it to that point.
Yeah.
So
But you know that's at stake though, right? Like that's the heaviness of it while you're going through it. This is
Yes.
this is gonna do something to me. I don't know if it's gonna be good or bad, but something's gonna happen if I don't deal.
I knew, you know what, and along the way, I also knew that as I was going through those crises and the trauma was surfacing, there were things that I was losing. I was losing relationships,
Yeah.
and sometimes I recovered. I stabilized enough to get through that particular crisis by shifting my focus and refocusing on maintaining and just doing what I needed to do, becoming very useful.
Yeah.
That's it.
So that's when you started to embrace the issues? When did that happen? When did you just really just stop running and just decide I'm going to embrace these?
I think probably about close to 10 years ago, 10 to 12 years ago. Mm-hmm. I started realizing I'd have to take a look, not outside of myself. Mm-hmm. I needed to refocus inward. Mm-hmm. To how everything had affected me.
Yeah.
How it was affecting me, and how I would allow it to affect me moving forward.
So when there's people out there right now that are going through what you went through, that are on that journey, like, do you encounter people?
Yes. Yes, I do.
When I do too, but when I come up to somebody, I like it's usually another Native person, right? Mm-hmm. And when I meet them, I see where they're at. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, there's a continuum, right? Like, on this end of the continuum, you know nothing and you don't want to know anything. And on this side of the continuum, you know all of it, and you're dealing and you're healing, right?
Yes.
And wherever you fall in between those 2 points is where you fall. And
yep.
I can see where someone's at.
Because you've been there.
Yeah. Having gone through most
yep.
of it, I can kind of see, oh yeah, okay, this guy here that I'm talking to, he's
not
on
at
his
that
way.
place yet.
Yeah, he's on his way.
He hasn't taken that turn yet. Or yeah.
But but I find it interesting. Like, I was in Toronto, and same thing, and I think that's one of the things that I've taken away from the whole thing, mm-hmm. is that people, residential school is a bad thing, all the stuff that happened, bad, but at the same time, there's something that I really, and maybe it's because I have no other choice but to look at it the way I do, but whenever I see another Native person, that's something that is connecting us, even though we don't know each other. It's like, your parents went through something, my parents went through something, and we're both
community,
kind of,
and not just your parents and me and us, but also your entire community.
Yeah.
As a community, we are all residential schooled to some degree.
You know what? This whole thing is it's a personal event in everybody's life. It's like a core issue, right?
It is.
And so when I come across someone, I realize that we share the same core issue, and we deal with that core issue in different ways, maybe the same ways, but different ways, but we all are dealing with the same core mm-hmm. issue. And I think that knowing that about someone is pretty intimate, and I don't think a lot of people have that kind of thing that Native people have. You know what I mean? Like, there's almost a caring spirit built into the conversations. Yes. Once you're there, you know what I mean? You're not too quick to judge certain people, because right. You know, it's like, yeah, man, that guy's,
they're struggling.
You can see, yeah, right.
They're struggling.
And I know why he's struggling, and I
yeah.
know personally why he's struggling.
Yeah.
And it's just, that's to me, that's a special kind of bond that I think is kind of unique to us. And I don't it's, you know, there's so much ugliness and pain and suffering in that whole conversation that I think it's important to find the little gems of wisdom and the gems of mm-hmm. of healing and blessing that are there.
Right.
And I think that's one of them that I kind of take comfort in knowing that if I run into somebody who's a complete stranger, there's something that we have in
yes.
common, that there's a starting ground for a conversation. You know what I mean?
There is. Absolutely. I understand that.
Yeah. And you got to find some good stuff in this, you know, because there's so much bad stuff. It's
okay,
like,
you know,
horrible.
Aaron, one of the things, you know, when people ask me, how did you get through all that trauma? Because if I can only tell people about portions, mm-hmm. because the whole picture,
it's nuts.
It's nuts. It's too, I mean, the shock value is just, I lower the bar.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't need to do that to people.
Well, you're actually reliving it yourself. You're re-traumatizing yourself when you do that, right?
I could see how I could, and I know that I have.
Yeah.
So now I just do it in portions.
Yeah.
You know, but the message that I bring forward is, or one of the messages is, I dealt with it by taking an honest, an authentic look into the experiences that I lived through, that were brought to me. And I made a conscious effort to say to myself, what role, what part did I play in that event that was put in front of me? In other words, sometimes I made choices. I made a choice to drink in excess.
Yeah.
I made a choice to take the drugs.
Yeah.
That was I did that.
Yeah.
No one forced that on me. And I continued to do it. That was the role and part that I played. And I had to own up to that. And then there were things that were beyond my control. That wasn't my control. There were things that happened to me that were beyond my control. Trauma.
Yeah.
And then I made a conscious effort to look at those events and say, what was going on when that occurred? What was going on with that person who hurt me? Or what was happening within the system where I was, I don't want to say victim, but a lot of times we are victims to the system with situations that are beyond our control. And we don't own that.
Yeah.
So
broadening your scope.
So I take a look at that situation and I try to look at the dynamics around that situation or around that person. What was that person going through? Where were they at? And then I come to that understanding and I release the anger that I had, release the hurt that I was feeling. And when I really grow, when I really have got it right, I forgive and I love in spite of. And when that happens, I am propelled along my healing journey.
Yeah.
So that's what that situation. When it's something that I did, that I had a role and part to play in, I forgive myself, number one. Number two, I learn. And I say, I am not going to make that same decision. I'm going to learn from this mistake. So out of those two scenarios, that's where I find my healing. And that is the reason, when those situations and the answers align themselves within myself, that's better. That's so much better than any high.
Yeah.
So much better. And that's what keeps me clean.
Yeah.
That's what keeps me sober.
Well, because you know where you're going after that.
Absolutely.
It's like a big cloak has been lifted off of you.
Yes.
And you're free to leave a room.
Yep.
And that's a good feeling. Yeah,
Yep.
I know what you're talking about. That's
and then
awesome.
The other message that I have to give is the forgiveness part. If I can forgive people who did things to me, if I can forgive myself, and I've done some pretty bad things to myself. I hurt myself. I hurt when I thought that I'm not hurting anybody.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I know.
You know what? That's just something that we tell ourselves to continue on our destructive path.
Denial is a huge thing with a lot of us, and I know that that's the biggest thing that's the biggest hurdle that I see a lot of people kind of struggling with is denial.
If you're not able to tell yourself the truth, when nobody else is watching, when at night when you're alone, if you can't even tell yourself the truth, it's really difficult to be honest with anybody else.
Yeah.
And when you're able to say, this is where I'm at, this is what I'm feeling, and I need to do something different.
There's an innocence that we have when we're children, eh? Like there's an innocence that we have where we just kind of know all that, and then it kind of disappears from our lives for some strange reason. I find with my journey, I was really, really heavily into drinking and stuff, and there was still a lot of issues that I was having, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Perfect Crime, I wrote Perfect Crime, my song Perfect Crime,
Okay.
when I was 23, 24 years old. And I can't remember how old I was, 42, something like that. And I was looking at the comments on YouTube, because I uploaded Perfect Crime onto YouTube, the music video.
Okay.
And somebody wrote in a comment, finally somebody told the truth about what happened.
Okay.
Because they just finished watching the Perfect Crime video, and that was their comment. Finally someone told the truth.
Wow.
And it hit me because at that point I was totally lying to myself. And I think I started crying because I
Wow.
read it and I said to myself, this person's commenting to me that I'm telling the truth.
Ooh.
And here I am,
That
and it just
cuts.
was like boom, right?
Yep.
And yeah, that was tough. But it took me back to, yeah, Aaron, you were 24 years old and you used to be different then.
Mm-hmm.
You used to be able to just, but the journey took you off that. And now here you are, but you're being reminded that that's the way it used to be for you.
Wow.
So you know what I mean? Like it just kind of, things kind of happen the
Yep.
way they happen, and the issues are always going to be there, but we were once different.
And the thing is, I think that somehow my spirit always knew that I would be strong enough to endure what I went through. And, looking back now, I think about the fact that I survived those events. But then I had to live through the painful memories. And it was like, why is it that the memories of something are even more traumatic, that are stronger almost, than the actual event?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. But when I was able to realize these are memories, and I am allowing my mind to obsess
Mm-hmm.
about those memories.
Yeah.
When I was able to see that, to see my patterns,
Mm-hmm.
then I was able to okay, let's do something different now. Let's try. Let's just make it a point that we're going to think about trying something different. So the plan came, and then I kept trying. Yes, I would still go back to the obsessive thinking
Mm-hmm.
about the pain and about, being hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Or if I'd see a person or I'd see a situation that reminded me, oh yeah, go back to that.
Yeah. Square one with
Yeah.
it. Yeah. Well, letting go is a big thing. Like letting go is a huge, huge thing to do, but it's the hardest thing to
Yeah.
do for some people, for some of us. It's hard. It's really hard. I remember I couldn't look at certain pictures. I couldn't look at pictures of my
Okay.
kids. I couldn't look at pictures of my parents. I couldn't hear certain
Wow.
songs. I just no. Just then I'd go into my problem to avoid it, right? And I remember there was this one song. It was my dad was still alive, and there was this one song. I used to go bike riding at night. I'd go to a track and I'd just go bike riding, and I'd put
Okay.
headphones on, and I'd burn my own discs and whatever. And there was this one song that for some reason I started thinking of my father as I'm doing this track, right? Over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
And I started crying while I was, right?
Wow.
And one of the things that, next thing I know, 5 minutes passed by and it felt like 2 seconds went by. And I thought, hey man, if I do that over and over again, it'll seem like 2 seconds have gone by and I'd been biking for an hour. I'll lose some weight. So I've thought, let's
Right.
get all those songs that make me sad, put
Yeah.
them onto. So that's what I did. And
Okay.
so I sat there and I sat there and I was crying and biking, and the time went by faster, but eventually those songs didn't make me sad anymore.
Cool.
Yeah, those songs
Nice.
didn't make me sad anymore. So I thought, let's try this with the pictures. So I just sat there with the pictures and with the music and cried. And I cried it all out.
That's good.
I put some time aside and cried it all out. And eventually I look at the pictures and it was nothing anymore. I called it my cry box. I'd put all my pictures of my
Good.
kids and everything in my cry box. So I was like facing it, just facing it head on, like
That's
big
really cool.
time.
That's really cool that was your way, that you figured that out yourself. You weren't, it wasn't a program,
Yeah, for
you know,
sure.
that is broad. This was personal for you.
Yeah.
Awesome.
There's a lot of programs out there that are designed to help, and that's okay. But I think we have to kind of find our own
You see,
power
because
within
I
all of
believe,
it.
Programs are really, like, you wonder how many programs are really meant to really cure you,
Oh boy, here we go. There's a
No,
lot.
you know what? No, we're not going to go with that because a healthy person,
Yeah.
a cured person, doesn't feed the system. And
Yeah.
I don't think we need
That's
to
what
go
I
any
mean.
further.
Yeah,
we
yeah,
don't,
yeah.
We will not go any further.
That's a whole hour-long thing.
And
Right, there's a
really,
lot.
we don't need to go there. What
Yeah.
we need to what I want to focus on is the fact that our spirits are strong enough. Our original spirits. If we can reconnect to our original spirits, we have the strength to have endured what our traumas, the experiences of the
Yeah.
traumas that were brought to us, which goes back to the beginning of the conversation, having been disconnected from the 60s scoop, from being removed from my community, from my family, my community, and from my culture. And on top of it, the flip side of that too, one of the growing experiences that I had was the self-revelation is that not only was I denied my family and my culture and my heritage, and my culture, my family was denied me.
Yeah.
I thought when I came back and I reconnected, I thought that things weren't working out as I imagined, as I wanted them to, as quickly.
Yeah.
And I started to feel guilty. I thought, I'm not trying hard enough.
Yeah.
I'm too far gone. I'm too far gone. I'm
Well,
too
there's-
colonized.
Was it a romanticized thing that you had in your mind and that wasn't working out?
Probably
Yeah.
You know what? I'm an idealistic person.
Mm-hmm.
So I have the rose-colored glasses, and I
Yeah.
always did, and I always imagined things to be. The fact is, I also didn't know. I didn't know that I didn't know.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, totally.
That's
not, how can you blame yourself for that?
Yeah.
Right?
And then
And-
so I carried that guilt.
Yeah.
I did. And then once I realized it's not mine to carry, that
That's
we
true.
all lost. There was no winners. No
Yeah.
one made it this benefit. No one.
It's true.
So,
That's sad. That's a really sad realization.
okay, but at the
Harsh.
same time, it also relieved me of the burden.
Mm-hmm.
And then I could go forward thinking, okay, now what can I do? What can I do? Not for right now, what can I do for myself? Because I can't, it's too much for me to tell my relatives, this is what you need to do.
Yeah.
But maybe we can do that later on in a different way,
Mm-hmm.
where we can come together and help embrace one another.
That's the reason why I'm doing this
Yes.
podcast, right? Because
Yes.
the colonized mind thinks, oh, TV, great, we can do this and do that, and we could have a TV show, and we can have music videos and all this stuff like that. And it's just like, yeah, that's a facade. You want to create a facade, right? And it's to me, yeah, you could do that, but what's really beautiful is when you just point a camera at a native person and have them just speak, because the words do something to
Yep.
change the world, right?
Yes.
And I did like about 60 street interviews about 2 or 3 years ago, where I just let them talk. It was talk about your reserve, and people just like, well, I'm from Ebb and Flow, and it's a nice place, and blah blah blah. But then they started opening up about other things, and it was really interesting to go through all this. I still have all the footage.
Nice.
But I started to see how beautiful these people were. You know what I mean?
Cool.
And to me, I thought, yeah, you could come up with a show idea, or you could come up with something where, you're going to adorn people with special effects and all this other stuff and make them something they're not. You could do that, Aaron, but you could also just show them as they are and just have them be beautiful as they are, right? And so they have stories. We all have stories, and you're right, sharing and coming together. And what I try to do is instigate that with these kinds of things, right?
And then my thoughts are, what I'd like to do is I'd like to do this, take the sharing right straight into the community. Because not only were the kids removed, but there were gaps in the community. There is pain in the community.
Yeah.
It's not just about the adoptees. That's the big part of it.
Yeah.
But there's a big, big picture within the communities, within the elders who lost their grandchildren,
Yeah.
And so, but what I'd like to do is, as a newly formed organization, the 60's SCOOP Legacy of Canada, we would like to go into the communities. We would like to have embracing ceremonies, where we're having traditional elders doing storytelling, to the adoptees who are coming back in, and just have that, and it doesn't have to be a big production,
Yeah.
even if it's just 2 or 3, it's that authentic connection being made.
Yeah. That's a big one. A lot of people, like I've come across people that, I was in New York, and my friend Rich, he's from Peguis originally. And I'll probably beep out his name because I'm sure he wouldn't appreciate.
Yeah.
But so he's from Manitoba. He's from a reserve here, and he went back. He grew up in New York, and when I met him out there, I was talking to him about it, and this is before any of the 60 scoop thing was even mentioned. And I said, "So what was that like, man? You went back to your reserve?" And he goes, "I hated it." Yeah, like really. Yeah, it would have been nice to have what you were talking about completely, like storytelling and embracing and stuff. That's ideal for sure. We sat up at a
culture shock.
Well, we sat up in a house and drank for 3 days, and I couldn't believe they drank so much. And wow.
Oh my.
And I was just like, holy shit, dude, I'm really sorry, man.
Yeah.
They should be throwing you a parade, welcoming you home,
Yes.
And it kind of broke my heart that was his experience. But I mean, the holes and the gaps and everything like that were filled with things that aren't healthy.
Yes.
And so now here we are, right? So yeah, but you're right. I really hope that you guys can pull that off. I will help you as much as I can.
Thank you.
Because I think it would be a beautiful thing to have the communities embracing the kids, right?
There's pain on both sides of the spectrum. Like I said, it's not just the adoptees.
Yeah.
It's families that who lost these children. It's communities who lost numerous amounts of people from a generation.
When you come back, we'll talk more about stuff because
Okay.
there's so much to talk about, and you're coming back.
I will.
When somebody wants to get to learn more about you and the stuff that you're doing, where do they look?
It can be reached on Facebook under Jeannie Whitebird. Whitebird is my family name, and that's how you can get hold of me. Jeannie Whitebird, Jeanie, Whitebird.
Right on.
Thank you. And then we also have the 60's Scoop Legacy of Canada Facebook page. So,
All right, I'll put that on the screen.
okay,
Thanks for coming in.
wonderful.
We're gonna do
Thank
this
you,
some more,
Aaron.
right?
Yes.
All right.
Okay. Thanks, dear.
You did awesome.
Thank you.